The Caribbean sun glowed brilliantly over the turquoise waters, casting a warm golden hue over the runway at St. Lucia's Hewanora International Airport. Flight 826, an Airbus A350-1000, sat poised for departure, its sleek white fuselage reflecting the light like a beacon of modern engineering. Passengers eagerly boarded, unaware that this flight would soon become the most chilling tale in aviation history. In the cockpit, Captain Ryan Holloway and First Officer Elena Vasquez ran through their pre-flight checklist. Both seasoned pilots, they had flown this route countless times, but today, something felt different. A strange unease settled over Ryan as he adjusted his headset. "Winds are steady, clear skies ahead," Elena said, her voice steady but tinged with an unspoken tension. Ryan nodded, but he couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at the back of his mind. Shrugging it off, he called into the radio. "Tower, this is Flight 826, requesting clearance for takeoff." The response was delayed, static crackling in the background. "Flight 826, cleared for takeoff, maintain heading 180. The voice sounded distorted, hollow, as if coming from a great distance. Ryan exchanged a puzzled glance with Elena, but they proceeded as planned. The engines roared to life, sending vibrations through the aircraft as it surged down the runway. The familiar rush of takeoff filled the cabin, passengers leaning back as the Airbus lifted into the sky. For the first 30 minutes, everything was routine. Flight attendants moved through the aisles, serving drinks, and passengers settled into their seats. Some dozed off, while others gazed out the windows at the endless blue ocean below. Then, the first sign of trouble appeared. The fasten seatbelt sign flickered on and off, uncommanded. Ryan furrowed his brow and tapped the control panel. "Elena, did you touch the seatbelt sign?" She shook her head. "No." "That's strange." A soft chime echoed through the cabin, signaling a message from the flight attendants. Ryan answered. "Holloway here." Lisa, the lead flight attendant, sounded nervous. "Captain, something's odd. The passengers in row 14 keep saying they hear voices." Ryan stiffened. "Voices? From where?" "They say it's coming from the overhead speakers, but we aren't making announcements. And it's not static either. It sounds like whispers." Ryan and Elena exchanged an uneasy glance. "We'll check it out?" As Ryan switched to the cabin intercom to listen, a faint, barely discernible murmur played through the speakers. Words couldn't be made out, but the tone was unsettling. It was as if dozens of voices were overlapping, whispering in a hushed, urgent chorus. "Elena, tell me you hear that." She nodded, her fingers tightening on the throttle. "I hear it, and I don't like it." The whispers abruptly stopped. Then, the lights flickered. Passengers gasped as the cabin was momentarily plunged into darkness, before the emergency lights bathed everything in an eerie glow. A child whimpered somewhere near the back. Ryan turned to the controls, checking for electrical failures, but everything appeared nominal. "What the hell is going on?" he muttered under his breath. Before Elena could respond, the radio crackled with a transmission. "Flight 826, turn back. You are not supposed to be here." Ryan's blood ran cold. "Say again, ATC?" More static. Then the same voice, hollow and distant, but more insistent this time. "Turn back now." Elena's hands trembled on the controls. "Ryan, I have a bad feeling about this." Ryan took a deep breath. "Let's get ATC on a secondary channel. Confirm what's happening." Elena flipped to an alternate frequency. "ATC, this is Flight 826, requesting immediate confirmation of last transmission." A different voice answered, crisp and professional. "Flight 826, you are clear on current flight path. No recent transmission sent to your aircraft. Confirming all systems are normal." Ryan stared at the radio in disbelief. What the hell? Suddenly, the aircraft shuddered violently as turbulence rocked the plane. Warnings flashed across the instruments, and the altimeter fluctuated wildly. Ryan tightened his grip on the controls, forcing the plane steady. Outside, something moved through the clouds. Elena saw it first, her breath hitching. "Ryan, look!" Just off their wing, emerging from the dense fog, was another plane. But it wasn't any ordinary aircraft. It was an Airbus A350, identical to theirs, except it looked wrong. The fuselage was cracked and aged, its windows dark and empty. The registration number was barely visible, scratched and faded, but what chilled Ryan to his core was that it was the same as their own. The ghostly Airbus kept pace with them, its presence defying all logic. "That's impossible," Ryan whispered. The radio crackled again. This time, it was his own voice. "Flight 826, you are not supposed to be here." Elena's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. The ghost plane tilted its nose toward them, closing in fast. The whispers returned, deafening now, as if the very air was alive with unseen voices. The cockpit lights flickered erratically, and Ryan's grip on the controls tightened. "Elena, brace for evasive maneuvers. We're getting out of here." She nodded, eyes locked on the approaching phantom aircraft. "If we can." As Ryan banked sharply, attempting to evade the impossible doppelgänger, he realized one terrifying truth. They weren't flying alone anymore. The cockpit remained eerily silent except for the rhythmic hum of the engines and the persistent static crackling over the radio. The ghostly Airbus still hovered just outside their wing, a twisted reflection of their own aircraft. Ryan's hands clenched the controls, his knuckles white. "Elena, we need to get out of this airspace. Now!" She nodded stiffly, fingers dancing across the control panel, trying every available command to change their altitude, course, anything. "Autopilot's unresponsive. We're locked on our current heading." Ryan's stomach twisted. "Then we do this manually." He grasped the throttle and pulled, forcing the aircraft into a slow, deliberate climb. As if in response, the ghostly plane mirrored their movement, inching ever closer. The turbulence grew more violent, shaking the entire cabin. A few passengers screamed as overhead compartments popped open, spilling bags into the aisles. Lisa's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, what is going on?" Ryan pressed the switch. "Brace for turbulence. Secure the cabin." Through the windshield, the spectral Airbus flickered, its windows black voids. Then, for a fraction of a second, the cockpit inside it became visible. Ryan's heart nearly stopped. There were people inside, but they weren't alive. Their faces were pale, almost translucent, eyes wide and sunken as if they had been staring for eternity. And in the captain's seat sat him. "Elena, did you see?" A deep, guttural voice burst over the radio, drowning out the rest of his words. "Flight 826. Turn back." The voice didn't belong to any air traffic controller. It sounded ancient, hollow, as if spoken by something that didn't belong in this world. The lights in the cockpit flickered violently, and suddenly the ghost plane vanished. The radio went dead silent. The turbulence stopped. The cabin was still. Ryan and Elena exchanged an uneasy glance. "What just happened?" she whispered. Ryan exhaled, his heart still hammering. "I don't know. But whatever that was, it's not over." Just then, a new sound filled the cockpit. It was the unmistakable chime of an incoming distress signal. Ryan hesitated before flipping the switch to answer. "This is Flight 826. State your emergency." A static-filled silence stretched out, followed by a garbled voice. "FLI 826 DET LU THM take Y." Elena's eyes widened. "That was our flight number." Ryan swallowed hard. "That was my voice." The radio went dead again. At that moment, the altimeter spun wildly, the numbers dropping rapidly. A sudden force yanked the plane downward. Passengers shrieked as oxygen masks deployed. Warning alarms blared in the cockpit. Elena fought the controls. "We're losing altitude." Ryan gritted his teeth. "Not on my watch." Outside, the clouds thickened, swallowing them whole. The whispers returned. The plane shuddered violently as it continued its uncontrolled descent. Ryan gripped the yoke with all his strength, trying to level out the aircraft. The altimeter spun downward in an erratic blur. "Elena! Manual override now!" Ryan barked, his voice barely masking the panic creeping into his gut. "I'm trying!" "The controls aren't responding." Elena's fingers raced over the switches, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. "Nothing's working." The whispers grew louder, no longer just an eerie background noise, but a full-blown chorus of overlapping voices, speaking in languages neither of them could recognize. Some words, however, were unmistakably clear. "Let go! Give in! It's time!" Ryan clenched his jaw. "Not today." He forced the nose of the plane up with everything he had, fingers aching from the pressure. The engine sputtered, then roared back to life as if shaking off an unseen force. The descent slowed, and for a brief, fleeting moment, the plane steadied. Then, the ghostly Airbus reappeared, directly ahead. Its fuselage was battered, metal twisted in impossible angles. The cockpit windows were shattered, exposing a darkness that swallowed all light. Figures moved inside, their silhouettes flickering like candle flames in a storm. Elena gasped. It's us!" Ryan stole a glance, his stomach lurching at the sight. In the pilot's seat of the spectral plane, an identical version of himself sat motionless, his head tilted unnaturally. The doppelgänger's lifeless eyes locked onto his own, lips moving in a silent, unreadable command. The radio crackled to life. This time, it was his own voice, distorted, stretched like a transmission traveling through decades. "Don't fight it! The sky is ours!" Ryan's pulse pounded in his ears. "No!" He slammed the throttle forward. "We're getting out of here!" The engine screamed as the Airbus surged ahead, plummeting into the storm clouds. Lightning flashed, momentarily blinding them. When their vision cleared, the ghost plane was gone. The turbulence subsided. The instruments flickered back to normal. The whispers faded into silence. Ryan and Elena sat frozen in the cockpit, chests rising and falling in shaky unison. "Did we escape?" Elena finally whispered. Ryan hesitated before responding, staring out into the infinite, empty sky ahead. "I don't know."